questions? Lewis, have you got any more?
No.
No. Connor? James?
How does the Copyright Protection Act affect how we use IT in school?
That's a good question, copyright protection in school. Now in terms of some of the courses that we do in school, as any of you who did DIDA last year will know that you have to adhere to copyright when you use images or sounds or movies off the internet. So it's starting to creep in much more. Shall I pause? Just wait. Right, copyright's starting to creep in much more into qualifications, so we have to make sure that we're teaching copyright. That's one aspect of it. In terms of use within school, one really big example is school shows. If we put on a show in school, such as the Christmas Carol that was on last week, we actually have to pay for the right to be able to do that show, because the copyright surrounding everything is pretty tight, but it's always been very tight around live performance of music. And printed music, the printed score and the lyrics and things are also protected by copyright. So if we want to put on a show, we have to pay the person who owns the copyright for that show for the right to be able to perform it. And they will give us a limited right, so it could be for a 3-night performance plus rehearsals, and that's all we have rights to. So that's really one of the biggest issues that we have. We can't then produce a DVD of the show. You've noticed that probably years ago we used to produce a DVD. Some of you were here for the School of... Were you here when we did the School of Blood show? Some of you may have been in it. No? Just stick it there, I'm filming it. There's a note on the door. Yeah. Alright, I'll edit that bit out. So when we did the School of Blood, for example, that was actually written, the whole thing was written by Mr. Thomas and Mr. Briggs. So we could put DVDs out and sell DVDs of that show without a problem, but we cannot do that now. We legally cannot do that. We're allowed to take photos and put it on the internet, but that's all we can do. So we are really restricted by that. In terms of any magazines that we produce in school, like the Hollow, if it's distributed to the public, we have to be very careful about not using images from the internet which haven't got copyright. And finally, it's to do with software. We've got to be very careful. There was a case that I heard of a while back with a school that was prosecuted and fined £900,000 by Microsoft because they'd bought one license for Microsoft Office and then copied it across all of the computers in their school. Now, our license fees for Microsoft this year are in the region of about £3,500. It's one of our biggest IT costs, because we have to pay for a site license for Windows, we have to pay for a license for the servers, and we also have to pay for a license for Microsoft Office as a site license, and that means we can install it on as many computers as we want. And that's a big cost, but that's under the Copyright and Patents Act. Any questions about how that might relate, how we could compare that act with another organisation? Kaylee?
How would you compare that to Amazon?
Okay. Well, Amazon when they're selling their own stuff, they can only sell stuff which is legal to sell. So if you are selling a DVD on Amazon, for example, it has to be the original DVD. People can sell stuff on Amazon, you can sell stuff on Amazon, on the marketplace. So if you've got DVDs that you don't want, you can sell them, but they have to be the original DVDs. You cannot sell, it would be illegal for them to sell pirate DVDs. Now in terms of Amazon Marketplace, probably what you will find is that the terms and agreements of that when you sign up to Amazon Marketplace are very, very clear. If Amazon is selling from their own warehouse a DVD, they take the responsibility for making sure that it is a legal copy and not a pirated copy. If, however, you are selling it and you sign up from Amazon Marketplace, you are taking the responsibility. And if it is later found that you are selling pirate DVDs through Amazon, you will have signed terms and conditions or agreed to them by clicking terms and conditions, which mean that you agree to only sell legal DVDs, for example. So that the legal situation will be very clear in the terms and conditions, which is all that long bit of text that nobody ever bothers to read. But you probably should.
How would websites like eBay and Amazon ensure that their system is cost effective? Because on eBay people will be just posting loads and loads of different items and no one's buying them, so it's not. So it's just filling up their servers with stuff that no one's buying. How would eBay ensure that that's cost effective?
By listing fees. It's a good question because people do. There's an awful lot of dross on the internet. People just post loads of stuff. If you sell on eBay, one of the things you'll notice is that there are two ways that eBay actually make money from this. The first is the listing fee. They charge you money to list. And in some categories, it's pence, or not even at all. Some categories they give free listings. So clothing tends to be free. It's free to list items of clothing on there. But they also make money out of the final value. So if it sells, they take a cut, 10% or 15%, depending on the item, of the actual final value. So if you list, say, a pair of trainers, you may not pay something to list it, but if they were particularly high value trainers and they sold for £80, you'd probably pay about £10, £12 of that as a final listing fee to eBay. Now obviously they only get that if the item sells. If they're finding that they get a lot of items being posted for sale on eBay that aren't selling in particular categories, they can start to increase the listing fees. So if it's starting to get to the point where it costs you a fair amount of money to list, people aren't going to bother. People aren't going to waste their time listing things that won't sell if they've got to pay to do that. So they can, and they've got the right to actually change and vary their listing fees. You find things like cars. To sell a car on eBay, there's quite a high listing fee to start with. So you're only going to try and sell cars on eBay if you've got a fair chance of selling them. Because it's going to cost you money in the first place. So they would do that just by varying their fees. And also things like photos. I don't think at the moment you can post videos in all categories. You can on some categories you can post a video. Now obviously if eBay allow their sellers to post videos, that's going to require a lot more server space, which will be a big investment for them. So they would maintain their cost effectiveness by charging you more money to add video. A few years ago it would cost money to put big size images on there. It doesn't now in some categories. But they would try and recoup investment in servers by charging for that service directly to their sellers. Any other questions? Kaylee?
How does a school back up its media?
Backup. So backups actually, we back up our servers 4 times a day. We back up the student server and which is where all your work is stored, and also the staff server where my work is stored. We have backups 4 times a day. They're created as a local mirror onto another part of the hard disk. We then, at the end of the day, we do tape backups, and we do that on what's called the grandfather, father, son approach, where we take a really big backup at the end of every month, we take smaller backups at the end of every week, and we take smaller backups at the end of every day. And the daily backups are just backing up changes. So we're not backing up whole files, we've not got multiple copies of files, but we back up the changes to those files. Those tapes, and the reason we store to tape is that they can hold a huge capacity, and they are also tend to be more secure and a cheaper way of doing it. So we back those up and we store those in the new block. So the main server is in the main hall, and the tapes themselves are stored in the new block, so that if there's a fire in the main server room, the backups won't be affected. And we are just about to pay £500 to buy a proper fireproof safe for those as well, so that if there happened to be a fire in both places, or a particularly big fire which jumped from the main block to the new block, that they would be protected. I think it gives them something like a 4-hour protection, which should be enough for the fire services to come in and put the fire out, fingers crossed. But that's the way we do that. At the moment, we don't have any kind of cloud backups, which is where you can back up to the internet, because obviously our internet service isn't good enough to allow that. Any other questions about backups? Does anybody have a follow-up question about anything that we've talked about so far? James?
No.
Jack?